वेलकम बैक नाजरीन। हमारे पहले हाफ ऑफ द प्रोग्राम में हम बात कर रहे थे सफराज और नाजमीन के साथ कि माह रमज़ान में आपको अपनी हेल्थ का किस तरह ख्याल रखना चाहिए और अगर आप मेडिकेशन पर हैं तो आपको वो मेडिकेशन किस तरह मैनेज करनी चाहिए। Safraz, we've spoken about a number of issues in terms of smoking, etc. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about was if you're asthmatic and you use an inhaler, what's your advice around that?
Okay, there's a lot of people out there that suffer from asthma. It's a very common condition, and I think a lot of people have found that there's varying opinions on if an inhaler will break your fast. Now, it depends how well controlled your asthma is. If you're using an inhaler as in Ventolin for an asthma attack maybe once every 3 months, 6 months, then I would think it would be perfectly fine for you to keep your fast. And then there's a chance that maybe one of those 30 days that you might have to break because you have an attack. Because I feel that if you're using an inhaler, even though you're not taking on any foods or nutrients, but the actual aerosol and the gas that's coming down your mouth and through your throat will break your fast.
It will break, yeah.
So therefore, if you had to use your inhaler, your fast will then be compromised. If you're using a preventative inhaler, you can use that in the morning. So a lot of people will use something like Clineal, maybe once every morning before the pre-dawn, and that will prevent them having an attack. But if your asthma is really severe, you're using the preventer and you're using your attack inhaler 4 or 5 times a day. You're taking maybe steroids to boost your immune system, and maybe you're using some sort of inhalation to help open up your airways, then you'll be exempt from that fast because it's not practical for you to do all that and still maintain the fast.
So it depends on your condition.
Yeah, so how severe your asthma is, how well controlled it is, and all the treatments that you're taking. But I'm thinking if you have an asthma attack once a year, then there shouldn't be any reason why you can't carry on.
And if you're well controlled, then there's no reason why you can't fast. And if you're taking your preventative inhalers regularly, you can still take them morning and evening. It's not a problem.
Okay, नाज़मीन आप बता सकते हैं about children and fasting. हमारे बहुत सारे बच्चे हैं जो बहुत शौक से फास्ट करते हैं और वैसे भी इस्लाम में है कि when a child gets to the age of puberty उन पे रोज़ा रखना वाजिब हो जाता है. Is there any advice that you can give to any children that are watching this program or their parents in terms of anything that they should do that may help their child in keeping and preserving the fast?
In general, children will follow the habits of their parents when it comes to keeping the fast and the routine, the food, and what they do during the day as well. So it's very important that you set a good example. So you're eating healthily as far as you can, and you're eating the right food groups to actually make sure that you've got stable blood sugar levels during the day as well. This will set your children a good routine for when they are fasting, leading up to before they have to fast, before it becomes compulsory for them to fast. As we talked about, you could do trial fasts at different times of the year where it's shorter and get them used to the actual routine of fasting and the other things that come with it in terms of mental state of mind. But it takes time to develop those routines. But as a general rule of thumb, children will copy what you do.
And that's a really good point again in terms of जो साफराज ने पहले भी मेंशन किया था फर्स्ट हाफ ऑफ द प्रोग्राम कि आप बच्चों को थोड़ा सा ट्रायल दे सकते हैं कि माह रमज़ान शुरू होने से पहले वो थोड़ा सा ट्राई कर ले and that gets them into the routine. नाजरीन, हम आज के प्रोग्राम में हेल्थ मैटर्स में हम माह रमज़ान के बारे में डिस्कस कर रहे हैं और उसी हवाले से हमारे पास एक छोटा सा वीडियो क्लिप है. चलते हैं इस वीडियो क्लिप की तरफ जो आपको माह रमज़ान और आपकी हेल्थ के बारे में बताएगा. नाज़रीन, ये था छोटा सा वीडियो क्लिप जिसने हमें बताया कि माह रमज़ान के बारे में और आप अपनी फ़िज़िकल और मेंटल हेल्थ के बारे में आप किस तरह लुक आफ्टर कर सकते हैं. Safas, that was a video clip, and one of the things that it highlighted was mental well-being. Now, in terms of somebody's mental well-being, what's your advice for viewers around mental well-being and fasting?
I think certain individuals who are more vulnerable, adults or children, mentally during this period of time, would be exempt from the fast because they can't make the decisions, they can't understand the process. So if their condition allows it, and they should take that up with their GP. I think normally their family or their carers would be in a good position to make that judgment call, because they might still want to fast. Like a young child we were talking about would still want to fast, but maybe it's not suitable for them to go 19 hours without food, and they can't make that judgment call. It's up to the parent to do that. Same with the people who are compromised in their mental health. It might be their carer or the person that's looking after them, their family. They'll have to make that decision for them that it's not suitable for them to keep the fast, and then I believe they'd be exempt.
And Nazmeen, talking about mental well-being, sometimes a lot of people feel that they're more stressed and they're more anxious, and it's a bit more tensious in their house during Ramzan. Is that because of they've gone for a long period without food?
It could possibly be. I mean, just generally, we do actually live quite stressed lifestyles here as it is. And then during Ramadan, and lack of food, lack of water, perhaps change in routine. I think perhaps the stress comes from feeling tired as well, and that can be because of interrupted sleep. And all these factors together, along with heat and the fact that other people are fasting as well, our patience is really tested. The way that we can counter this is to manage stress levels as we will manage stress levels at any other time of year, at work, school, the same kind of things, is to actually just take time out, look at what's actually causing you to be stressed and adjust your routine accordingly, and learn to count to 10 as well, which is not a bad thing in any culture, but especially in Ramzan as well.
And one of the other things that may affect it is irregular sleeping.
Irregular sleeping.
Because of the time, if people finish Tarawih prayer and then they're up again for Sehri and sleep's disturbed, is there anything that we can advise people around sleeping? Maybe take a nap in the day if it's possible?
Yeah, so it depends now. A lot of people are working now from a normal 9 to 5. They're coming home, and I notice a lot of people are sleeping in that small gap up until iftari time, gives them a couple of hours. Because in the evening, once you've opened your fast, the prayer time and then time for Tarawih and then back to Sehri, it's all very close, and and some people find it may be difficult to fall asleep. It might take them half an hour or an hour to fall asleep, and then you're right back up again. So it is quite disruptive. But I think it's just not the food that you're missing out on. You're more aware of your actions during the month of Ramzan. So normally you might have a natural vent. If you're angry at somebody, you might say it, you might be a bit more quick to respond, and during Ramzan you're taking that time to stop, think, and then maybe that frustration, it's all building up inside you, and that maybe you need to find some sort of vent for that.
And you need to think that the people around you are in the same situation as you. So if you're feeling stressed and anxious, possibly the people around you are also feeling that as well. So it's about being tolerant to each other too.
It's a good time to reflect on your general behaviour towards other people as well.
Another medical condition or health issue that I wanted to speak to you about is constipation and urinary tract infection, because sometimes people will say that, I don't know, lack of water, etc., has caused a UTI, or on the other hand, they've got constipation. What's your advice around both of those things?
Well, we talked a little bit earlier on about making sure that your water intake is maintained, because lack of water will actually lead to constipation. But also we talked about making sure that you eat the right foods, and one of those foods is making sure you have enough fibre. The fibre will give you roughage, and with the water will make sure that you don't get constipated. If you have the fibre without the water, you will be constipated, and if you're having water without the fibre, again you're going to struggle. So it's important to eat the right things. But
so basically आप ये कह रही हैं कि फाइबर और पानी दोनों
को लाजमी साथ लेना लाजमी है, क्योंकि पानी के बगैर जो फाइबर होता है ना, वो आपके ना अंदर स्वेल हो जाता है. पानी के बगैर फिर वो आपको ज़्यादा constipation हो जाती है.
And an example of high fiber foods, just for our viewers, things like Weetabix में fiber होता है, brown आटे में होता है, brown bread में होता है,
that kind of thing.
Potatoes की जो skin होती है उसमें भी fiber होता है. मगर जे आप ये चीज़ें नहीं खा सकते ना, आपको ना आर्टिफिशली आप फाइबर भी ले सकते हो. जैसे मेडिसिन भी होती है जो फाइबर की मेडिसिन होती है, मगर उनके साथ पानी पीना बहुत लाजमी ज़रूरी है. ये आप एडवाइस आप अपने फार्मासिस्ट से ले सकते हो.
I think it's generally how you treat the food that you're eating at iftari time. Is if you're chewing your food more, I know everyone's got that build up to iftari time and they want to eat as quickly as possible, but the more you chew your food, the better it's going to be digested, the more easier it's going to pass down the tract, and it's going to cause less complications. And the food that you choose will then affect, if people are suffering from acid reflux, upset stomach, indigestion, all that, this will all be affected by the food that you take, how you eat it, and the medicine that you take to help you cope with that.
And heartburn is another big issue that sometimes people do complain about during the month of Ramzan. Again, any advice?
ये जो जलन होती है इसको heartburn कहते हैं, साथ में acid reflux भी आपका हो सकता है, तो इसके ज़रिए जलन होती है। इसके काफ़ी वजह होती है ना, आप ओवरवेट हो, आपके ये प्रेस हो जाता है, जो खाना आप खाते हो, जी आप स्मोक करते हो, जैसे आप ऑयली फूड खाते हो, स्पाइसी फूड खाते हो ना, इसके साथ आपका हार्टबर्न बढ़ जाता है। आपको जो रेगुलर हार्टबर्न होती है ना, आपको ये चीज़ें देखनी चाहिए। आप स्पाइसी चीज़ें खा रहे हो, आप तेल वाली चीज़ ले रहे हो, जो आप सिगरेट पीते हो ना, उसके साथ भी आपकी ना हार्टबर्न ज़्यादा हो जाती है। ये सब चीज़ें आपको देखने पड़ते हैं, मगर इसका हल भी होता है ना, जैसे मेडिसिन होती है हार्टबर्न के लिए, काफ़ी पक किस्म के होते हैं ना, तो दूध भी आप पी सकते हो हार्टबर्न कम करने के लिए।
ओके, सो बेसिकली सहरी और इफ्तारी टाइम में इज़ एडवाइजेबल कि अगर आप हार्टबर्न सफ़र करते हैं तो एक ग्लास दूध का साथ ले लें।
And carry on taking your medication. So I think as mentioned, there's proton pump inhibitors and different classes of medication that people will take for indigestion, antacids. Take them in the morning time. So once you've had your meal, take your antacids, and that should help. There's practical tips that you could use as well, like keeping your head raised in the evening by putting an extra pillow in there. That'll help reduce the acid coming back up.
जब आप बेल्ट पहनते हो तो फिर वो आप बेल्ट ना पहना करो, क्योंकि जब जैसे ये दबाव होती है ना, इसके साथ ज़्यादा फिर रिफ्लक्स का हो जाता है।
And the body, when it's producing acid, isn't always to do with the food that you're taking in. Just smelling food or thinking about food can increase the amount of acid that the body is producing. And during Ramzan, people are there thinking about food all the time.
Oh God, I didn't realise that.
And if you're walking down the road and if you're going down Alum Rock Road, for example, doing your shopping, you can smell the food. And that's going to set off your...
Yeah, because normally you smell the food and then you eat food, so then you don't notice the heartburn because you get the acid production. But in Ramadan, what's happening is you're smelling the food, you're producing the acid ready to eat the food, but you're not eating it.
So, in terms of avoiding it, some of that's going to be unavoidable, because
some of that is going to be unavoidable.
If you're cooking in the kitchen, it's not possible. Maybe have a window open so you get some air, etc.
Yeah, but you'll get heartburn more from the type of foods that you eat. So you will tend to get heartburn more after you've eaten.
Okay.
Yep. So then looking at what you eat, you can still, we're not saying that you can't eat fried foods at all. Everything just needs to be in moderation. We're not saying that you can't have takeaways or eat fast food. It just needs to be in moderation. So look at having takeaways, fast food once a week, for example, and where you can cook at home. And when you do cook at home, your plate should be in portions. So if you think fried foods count as your fatty type of foods, it should be a very small size on your plate, and the plate should be filled with other things like carbohydrates, or a chapati or some rice. That should make up at least a third of your plate, and then a good portion of your plate should be made up with salad and vegetables as well. So you can still have these foods, but lower amounts, and then the other food that you have with it will decrease your risk of having heartburn.
Another thing that sometimes we often hear from people is that when they open iftar, a lot of people now tend to have only a little bit of food, and then tend to maybe go for their prayer and then come back and have the proper meal, if you like. Does that help in any way?
Yeah. As we spoke earlier on in the previous half of the show, your stomach does shrink in size because you're not eating regular meals, and then we're forcing large meals into a very small stomach. This comes with problems like heartburn and that feeling of bloatedness, fullness, that sensation of being overfull as well. It's actually quite common in North African countries like Morocco and Egypt, Algeria. When they open their fast, they will open it with something light, like a soup, like a harira soup, have something very light, pray, go about their business, and actually have a bigger meal, usually after Tarawih. Now I understand that our timings here mean that Tarawih is quite late, but the principle in itself is applicable here as well, is to have something smaller, because it takes about 20 minutes for what goes into your stomach for the message to then go to your brain to tell you whether you're full or not. So in that 20 minutes, if you've filled up your plate with lots of food, you've actually eaten probably more than you need before your brain gets that message. So eating the small amount means that you're able to help your brain to decide how much food you've eaten and how much more you need, which is where the chewing comes into it, and taking your time to chew your food.
Because during this Ramzan, I had an occasion where it was time to open the fast. We were just given some dates, some water and some fruit. And then we never got a substantial meal until about 12, 1 o'clock in the evening. And to be honest, the dates, the water, it was enough.
It was enough.
And when you're eating at 12 o'clock, you think, okay, it's been even longer now and I should be even more hungry. But then we couldn't even eat a plate full of food at that time. And because that initial need had been overcome with the dates and the fruit. And those 2-3 hours later, we never felt that hunger as much, and even a small amount of food was finding difficult.
There's a very good reason that we're encouraged to break our fast with dates and water. That's because that's actually all we need in terms of dates, water and fruit. That is actually all we need to start with.
So I mean, the dates, water, fruit would give you that sugar intake, and then it can.
And the dates, the flesh has fibre in, and then you've got the water as well. And with fruit as well, the skin of the fruits tend to have quite a lot of fibre. And if you have the fruit as a whole, so not as a juice, if you have it as a whole, then you actually get quite a lot of fibre. It's actually quite nutritionally complete, isn't it?
Safraz, in the media, हमने सुना है that, for example, in places like Pakistan, there's been a huge death toll in Karachi with the heat wave, etc. While here, the heat is nowhere as near. And obviously Islamically fasting फर्ज है और हम सबको encourage करते हैं कि उनको रोज़ा रखना चाहिए लेकिन in terms of health के बारे में, if people are worried, again, what would you say? Back to the GP first?
I think when it comes to health, for example in Pakistan, I think there's a lot of other circumstances there that are causing those deaths. Now the food, the lack of food, the heat plays an important factor. But then if you don't have basic necessities, cleanliness, lack of electricity, there's a lot of other factors and facilities that those people don't have access to. And maybe that's what's causing such a high death toll. Because there's other places in the world that are warm,
equally as warm,
or even more warm, but those people fast without this amount of death.
It's not to be scared that that's the sole reason.
But it just so happens that we're fasting now at this time of year where it is hot. Actually, what we should be advising is to follow the same advice that you would follow for hot weather, whether or not you're fasting. It's the same advice. So to make sure when the sun is at its highest point, to make sure that you're not in a direct sun contact. So you need to consider from about 11 till about 2 o'clock to consider being indoors, being in shade. If you do have to go out, make sure that you're covered, you have a sun cap, things like this. Consider using a sunblock, because then if you're getting overheated, then your body is having to adjust for the fact that you're getting overheated, and you're going to be sweating more if you're hot as well. So you need to keep yourself cool, because you're not only losing water through sweating, you're actually using electrolytes as well. So then this is why you start to feel weak, restless, confused, and you start to feel generally quite unwell. You should follow the general advice for hot weather and heat wave, and it's not limited to just fasting and Ramzan. Being sensible.
Especially if you're coming into that environment, you'll see people that have lived in those environments their whole lives, they still carry on with their normal daily routine. They still carry on with their manual labour, they're lifting big pots, steel, they're still working, and because they're used to that environment. And if we're coming in from a different environment, then we have to take sensible precautions.
We have to look at how they adjust in their lifestyles. What you tend to find in hotter countries is that when it's really hot, they don't tend to work in the middle portion of the day.
Thank you very much to both of you for coming onto our program and telling us about healthy eating and healthy exercise and basic health advice during the month of Ramadan. नाज़रीन, ये थे हमारे स्टूडियो गेस्ट सफराज हुसैन और नाज़मीन हतीजा, जिन्होंने हमें आके माह रमज़ान में हेल्थ एडवाइस दी कि अगर आप रोज़ा रख रहे हैं तो आप अपनी सेहत का किस तरह ख्याल रख सकते हैं. अगर आपने कोई ऐसी टॉपिक देखनी है इस प्रोग्राम पे तो आप मुझे ईमेल कर सकते हैं at healthmatters@thenewtv. इस हफ्ते के लिए मैं आपसे लेती हूँ इजाज़त. अल्लाह हाफ़िज़.